It was supposed to be just a kiss. That's what we told ourselves. Like saying it out loud made it easier to ignore how much it actually meant. Made it feel less risky, less real. But the truth is, nothing between me and Jordan had ever been just anything. We met freshman year during the welcome week chaos. I was in line outside the student union, waiting for free pizza, pretending not to be overwhelmed. Jordan was behind me, tall, kind of gangly in a charming way, wearing a faded Ratatouille t-shirt like it was his most prized possession. I complimented it without thinking, and he lit up like I had handed him a trophy. After that, we clicked, immediately, stupidly fast. We were those kind of friends, always together, always teasing each other, always a little too in sync. People assumed we were a couple from day one. We'd just laugh it off. Nah, just roommates, just friends. By junior year, we were still sharing a place, some rundown apartment with crooked floors and a microwave that sparked if you pressed the buttons too fast. But it was home. Him in the living room yelling at FIFA, me in the kitchen trying not to burn dinner, and the two of us constantly orbiting each other like it was second nature. That Tuesday night, I remember it clearly because Tuesdays were always our bad movie night. We were watching some awful horror flick where the killer used a toaster as a weapon. I was half laughing, half choking on popcorn, and Jordan was narrating the movie like it was Mystery Science Theater. Then he paused. "You've got something," he said, his eyes on my mouth. I wiped at my face. "What?" He leaned in, and instead of answering, he reached out and brushed his thumb against the corner of my lips. But his hand didn't move away. He just stayed there, close, eyes flicking from my mouth to my eyes and back. I didn't breathe. "Jordan," I said, barely above a whisper. And then he kissed me. Soft, hesitant, but definitely a kiss. I didn't stop him. Not at first. It was over in seconds. I pulled back, confused, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What was that?" I asked. He looked down, cheeks flushed, voice quiet. "I don't know. It was just a kiss." But we both knew better. It was the start of everything. The rest of that night was weird. Not in a dramatic way. We didn't fight, didn't storm off or make it a thing. But there was this silence. Like we both agreed to hit pause on reality until we could figure out what to do with what just happened. Jordan stood up a few minutes after the kiss, muttered something about brushing his teeth, and disappeared into the bathroom. I sat there on the couch, the movie still playing in the background, but all I could hear was the pounding in my ears. When he came back, he didn't say anything about it. Just flopped onto the couch, again careful not to sit too close this time. We finished the movie. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel that kiss all over again. The way his lips had hesitated, the way his hand had hovered near my face like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to touch me, like he wasn't sure if I'd pull away or pull him in. The next morning was even worse. He was already up, sitting at the kitchen table, with his laptop open and a coffee mug in hand like nothing had happened. He looked up when I walked in, gave me a casual morning, and went right back to typing. "So that's how we were playing this?" "Okay, fine." I poured myself some cereal, sat across from him, and pretended not to notice that his eyes kept flicking up from the screen to my face. "You heading to class?" I asked, trying to sound normal. He nodded. "Yeah, in a bit. Got a group project meeting." I stirred my cereal, even though it was already soggy. "Cool?" Silence. Then, after a long pause, he said, "About last night." I looked up too fast. "Yeah?" Jordan's mouth opened, then shut again. He scratched the back of his neck. "I don't know. That was..." I didn't mean to make things weird. "You didn't," I said too quickly. Then added, "I mean, maybe a little." That made him smile, just barely. "Yeah, same." We both went quiet again, and I couldn't help but feel like we were standing on the edge of something. But neither of us had the guts to take the next step. Jordan finally broke the silence. "It's not like it was a big deal, right? Just a kiss." I nodded. "Right, just a kiss." But even as I said it, my stomach twisted, because it didn't feel like just anything. It felt like something we'd been circling for years without admitting it. like a door cracked open, and now neither of us knew whether to slam it shut or walk through it. He left for class, and I sat on the couch for a while after, just staring at the blank TV screen. The next few days were awkward in that quiet, careful way, like we were both scared of bumping into the memory of that kiss. We still hung out, still shared meals, still watched Netflix in our usual spots. But there was always this tension, this space between us that had never been there before. And then Friday happened. Friday night was supposed to be chill. We'd been invited to this small house party by some mutual friends, and even though neither of us were feeling especially social, we figured a distraction might help. Something normal. Something that didn't involve sitting in the same apartment pretending a kiss never happened. I wasn't even sure why I went. I wasn't in the mood to drink or yell over bad music in a cramped living room, but part of me wanted to see how Jordan would act around other people. Around me. Would it be different now? Would he keep his distance? Turns out, he didn't. If anything, he was closer. It started small. A hand on my shoulder while he laughed at something dumb, I said. Sitting on the arm of the couch I was already on, even though there was plenty of space elsewhere. Glances that lingered just a bit too long. At one point, I went to the kitchen to get some water, and he followed. Just stood there behind me while I filled a cup at the sink. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," I said, not turning around. "Just needed a breather." Jordan stepped a little closer. I could feel the heat of him, his chest just inches from my back. "I've been thinking about it," he said. I turned. "About what?" He didn't even blink. The kiss. My heart did a weird little lurch. "And? I don't think it was a mistake." I stared at him, unsure if I was supposed to say something, do something, but he kept going. I keep trying to act like it didn't mean anything, that it was just spur of the moment or whatever, but I can't stop thinking about it. The air between us shifted, heavier now. I haven't stopped thinking about it either, I admitted. Jordan let out a breath like he'd been holding it for days. He reached out, fingers brushing mine. "So what do we do?" Before I could answer, someone called his name from the other room. He squeezed my hand once, quick, like a promise, and stepped back. "We'll talk later," he said. But we didn't. Later came and went. He got pulled into a beer pong game. I ended up talking to someone from class. The party dragged on, and by the time we finally left, the moment had passed. Or at least, it felt like it had. The walk home was quiet, a little tipsy, a little tense. When we got to our apartment, he dropped his keys on the counter and turned to me. "Hey," he said, voice soft. "Yeah?" He looked at me for a long second, like he wanted to say something. But then he shook his head. "Never mind." He disappeared into his room, and I stood there in the kitchen, wondering what the hell we were doing. If we were moving forward or backward, or just stuck in this weird limbo where nothing was clear. Then, somewhere around 2 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I was half asleep when the knock came, soft, hesitant. It wasn't like Jordan to knock. Usually he just barged in without thinking. We didn't really do boundaries in this apartment. At least not until now. I rolled out of bed, heart already picking up speed, and opened the door. Jordan stood there barefoot, in just gym shorts and a hoodie that he hadn't bothered to zip. His hair was a mess, eyes a little puffy like he hadn't slept either. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice low. I stepped aside. He walked in, glanced around like he was seeing my room for the first time. Even though he'd crashed here 100 times, he didn't sit. Just stood there near the edge of the bed like he wasn't sure what he was doing. "I couldn't sleep," he said. I nodded. "Same." He looked up, and in that second, something gave. Whatever wall we'd been building between us since Tuesday, it cracked. "I wasn't lying earlier," he said. "At the party. I've been trying to act cool about it, like it didn't get to me, but I think I've been lying to myself for a long time. I didn't say anything. I wanted to give him the space to say what he needed to say." "I don't know what it means," he continued. "I've never felt like this about a guy. Not before, not until you." My throat tightened. He stepped closer, slow, careful, like he was afraid I'd push him away. "I just keep thinking," he said, "if one kiss could mess me up this bad, maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe I didn't kiss you by accident." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You didn't," I said. Jordan exhaled sharply, like he'd been waiting to hear that. "Then, can I do it again?" he asked, eyes searching mine. "And this time, not pretend it didn't happen?" I nodded. "Yeah." And then he kissed me. It wasn't tentative like the first time. It was careful, yes, but full of all the things we hadn't been able to say. His hands came up to my jaw, his body close, and I let myself melt into him because it finally felt safe to do so. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is confusing as hell," he whispered. "I know. I don't want to mess this up." "Then don't," I said. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight, but we can stop pretending." He gave a small laugh. "God, that sounds nice." Jordan stayed in my room that night, not for anything more than just being there. We curled up under the blanket like we'd done a dozen times watching movies. Only this time there was no pretending. No more acting like we weren't scared or curious or halfway in love already. We didn't talk much. He just curled against me, warm and real, and I could feel the slow rise and fall of his breath. It was quiet, but not empty. The next morning felt like waking up in a different life. Jordan was still asleep when I opened my eyes, one arm draped across my waist, his face buried in the pillow next to mine. He looked peaceful, uncomplicated, like none of this was weighing on him the way it was on me. But maybe it was. When he finally stirred, it took a second for him to register where he was. His eyes opened slowly, blinked once, and then landed on me. For a split second, I saw it. The panic. That moment of, "Oh God, what did I do?" But it faded just as fast, replaced with something quieter. "Hey," he said. "Hey." A pause. "You still good?" he asked, voice hoarse from sleep. "Yeah," I said. "You?" He nodded, then shifted onto his back, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. "This is going to make things different, isn't it?" "It already has," I said, "but that doesn't have to be bad." Jordan didn't say anything for a minute. Then he reached over and laced his fingers through mine. "I meant it," he said. "Last night. Everything I said." I looked over at him. "Even the part where you're confused as hell?" He laughed. "Especially that part." We got up eventually, made coffee, sat on the couch in our usual spots, only this time, our knees touched and neither of us moved away. It felt weirdly natural, like this version of us had been waiting in the wings the whole time. But that didn't mean it was easy. Over the next week, we didn't really define anything. We still did everything we always had. Late night runs for junk food, binge watching garbage TV, mock roasting each other over breakfast. But there was this new layer underneath it all. Sometimes he'd kiss me goodnight. Sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes he'd sit close enough for our thighs to touch for an entire movie. Sometimes he'd sit on the opposite end of the couch like nothing had changed. We never talked about labels. Not yet. I could tell he was still processing it all. What it meant for him, what it meant for us. And I didn't want to push. I just wanted him to feel like he didn't have to hide from it anymore. From me. One night, about a week after everything started, I came home from the library late. He was on the couch, hoodie pulled over his head, looking half asleep with the TV glowing quietly in the background. I tossed my bag down and flopped next to him. "Tired?" he asked, voice soft. "Exhausted," I said, letting my head fall onto his shoulder. "Long night." He didn't move, just let me rest there, warm and steady beneath me. After a minute, I felt his hand slide into mine again. "You know?" he said, almost like an afterthought. "I still don't know what I'm doing." I turned my head. "Yeah, me either. But I want to keep doing this," he added. "With you." I squeezed his hand. "Then we'll figure it out." Jordan nodded. "Okay." And just like that, something settled between us. Not everything was clear, but something was certain. We were choosing this. It took about 2 more weeks before things started to shift, in ways neither of us could fully ignore. Not some dramatic, TV-worthy explosion. Just little cracks in the illusion we'd built, that we could keep this quiet, private, contained. We weren't careful. At first, we tried to be. Jordan was always cautious when people were around. He'd pull back just a little, make sure no one could read too much into the way we looked at each other. But I noticed the slip-ups. So did our friends. It started with a party at our friend Kelsey's apartment. It was small, just 10 or 12 people. Jordan and I arrived together, which wasn't unusual, but we stayed close. Not in a clingy way, just in sync. Sitting on the same couch, sharing a drink, bumping shoulders when we laughed. It was nothing. And everything. At some point, Jordan was in the kitchen grabbing more drinks, and Kelsey leaned over to me on the couch. "Are you guys?" I blinked. "What? You and Jordan?" she said, lowering her voice. "Is something going on?" I felt my heart thud hard in my chest. "Why would you think that?" She gave me a look. "I'm not blind, dude." I didn't say anything, because I couldn't lie to her face. I didn't want to. Her expression softened. "Hey, I'm not judging. You know that, right? It's just, you look happier than I've seen you in a while." That stuck with me. When Jordan came back, he must have seen something on my face because he gave me this look, worried, curious, open. Later that night, when we were walking home, I told him what Kelsey had said. He didn't freak out. He didn't deny it. He just asked, "What did you say?" "I didn't say anything," I replied. Didn't feel like I had to. We walked a few more blocks in silence, our hands brushing occasionally but never quite locking together. Then he said, "I'm not ready for everyone to know yet." "I know," I said. "That's okay. But I also don't want to keep acting like you don't mean something to me." That part surprised me. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't think he was ready to say it yet. "You mean something to me too," I said, voice low. Jordan stopped walking and looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was trying to memorize my face. "Then can we figure this out together?" he asked. "Even if it's slow? Even if I still have a lot of shit to untangle?" "Yeah," I said. "We don't have to rush." He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for years. That night, we didn't sleep in our own beds. We curled up on the couch under a single blanket, our legs tangled, my head on his chest. The TV was on, but neither of us paid attention. I think he just needed to feel close. Needed the quiet reassurance that I wasn't going anywhere. Neither was he. By the time winter break came around, Jordan and I had settled into something that looked like a relationship, even if we still hadn't officially called it that. We didn't make some big announcement. We didn't post cute couple selfies or tell everyone we knew. But the people closest to us started figuring it out. Like when he'd steal fries off my plate without asking, and I'd let him. Or how he'd stay up late watching movies and I'd find him asleep on my shoulder, mouth slightly open, completely at peace. Or the mornings he'd make coffee just the way I liked it, without needing to ask. It was in the quiet things. One night, a few days before we both left to visit our families, we were sitting in the living room, lights low, some old records spinning in the background. I was scrolling on my phone, legs tucked under a blanket. He was lying next to me, one hand resting on my knee like it belonged there. He glanced over and said, out of nowhere, "I told my sister." I looked up. "Told her what?" "About us." My heart jumped. "Yeah?" He nodded. "She was cool. Asked if we were official, and I said, 'I don't know. Not yet.'" I raised an eyebrow. "You don't know?" He grinned. "I didn't want to assume." I set my phone down. "Jordan, we've been sleeping in the same bed for 3 weeks. You literally asked me if my hands were cold this morning before holding them under your hoodie." He laughed. "Okay, yeah, that was a boyfriend move." "It was. So," he said slowly, drawing the word out, "are you saying I'm your boyfriend?" I shrugged, pretending to think it over. "I guess, if you're into that sort of thing." He leaned in, kissed the side of my neck. "I might be." We didn't make a big deal out of it. No social media post, No milestone announcement. It just became part of who we were. He was my boyfriend. The break was the first time we spent time apart since everything happened. He went home to see his family 2 states over. I stayed with mine. And those 2 weeks felt longer than they should have. We texted constantly, sent stupid memes, FaceTimed when we could, but something about not having him nearby made everything feel slightly off-kilter. Then one night, around midnight, he called. "Hey," he said, voice quiet. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," he said. "I just miss you." My heart squeezed in my chest. "I miss you too," I said. He hesitated. "Can I say something kind of stupid?" "Always." "I think I might be falling for you." I didn't speak right away. Not because I was surprised, but because I felt the same. "You're not alone," I finally said. "I think I already am." He didn't respond right away, but I could hear him breathe out, like that was all he needed to hear. When we finally hung up, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, smiling like an idiot. This wasn't just a phase, or a moment, or a kiss we tried to forget. This was something real. Jordan got back a day earlier than I expected. I was still in sweatpants, sitting on the couch eating cereal at 3 p.m. when the front door creaked open. I assumed it was our neighbor or a package delivery until I heard the sound of his duffel bag hitting the floor. Then his voice, "Hey!" I turned, mouth half full of cereal, and froze. "You're back? Surprise," he said, and then he crossed the room before I could even stand up and kissed me. Right there, standing in our living room, like we didn't need to hide anything anymore. When he pulled back, I was grinning like an idiot. So was he. "Okay, damn," I said, laughing. "Hi to you too." "I couldn't wait another day," he said. "Break sucked without you." We settled back into our lives faster than I thought we would. Classes started again. The city felt alive in that crisp January way, with cold mornings and late-night burritos and coffee runs between lectures. Only now, we were us, fully, openly. Jordan told his close friends. I told mine. Nobody freaked out. If anything, most of them responded with something like, "Finally," or "Took you long enough." Some days were better than others. He still had moments where he overthought things, pulled back a little, like when we'd hold hands walking back from class and he'd suddenly let go if he thought someone was looking. But I gave him time, because then there were other days where he'd kiss me in the middle of the kitchen with flour on his hands, or text me, "I miss you," from across campus, or fall asleep halfway through a movie with his head in my lap and his hand clutching my hoodie like he couldn't quite let go. One night, a few months later, we were walking home from a late-night diner run, and he stopped halfway down our street. I turned. "What?" Jordan was quiet for a second. Then he said, "You remember that night? The first one?" "Which part?" I asked, pretending not to know. "The kiss, the one that started all of this." I nodded. "Yeah, what about it?" He looked at me, eyes soft in that way they got when he wasn't sure how to say something. I'm glad it wasn't just a kiss. I stepped closer, resting my hands in the pockets of his hoodie. "Me too." He kissed me right there under the streetlight. No rush, no hesitation, just this warm, solid, steady kind of kiss that made it feel like we weren't just figuring this out anymore. We were in it. And that's how it really started. Not with a kiss, but with the choice to stay, to be real, together.